Good morning everyone, SBG Active Aussie here on this Friday morning. I've had quite a busy morning. I've been doing quite a lot of driving. I was at Wellington Point earlier this morning. Then I went to the cafe at Mount Gravatt, the Taiwan cafe, but they serve only Western food there, but the food's really fabulous. So far I've had a pretty fabulous Friday morning, so in pretty good spirits. I'm just here at Mount Cootha, now in the lowlands of Mount Cootha in the Simpson Falls area. Really beautiful part of Brisbane. I love coming around here. It's really great. It's close to midday, so just about the right time to come out. But on the weekends, there are just people, normies everywhere having barbecues, and people just come up here to relax on the weekends. But during the weekdays, it's fairly quiet. And just thought I'd come up here, have a look around, go for a walk and make this video. I've just got a question I want to ask any USA viewers and listeners. And in the wake of this latest mass shooting in Tennessee and the mass shootings in general that have been occurring on a fairly regular basis, I just want to know how you feel in regard to your personal safety in your own community. Do you feel safe? Do you feel fairly comfortable when you go around outside? And do you think that these shootings just get too much publicity and the situation with gun crime is not as bad as what the media is making out? Maybe they try and sensationalize it a bit, because it's very easy for people to believe in different types of stereotypes. And when I was in my 20s, my three best friends were brothers from Arkansas who had moved here to Australia, but they'd lived in LA for several years after they'd been living in Arkansas. They used to go back and forth from LA to Arkansas, and then they moved to Australia in the late 80s. But one of these guys, Matthew, the oldest brother, I was very friendly with and got on with him very, very well. And one day we were talking about certain stereotypes about different countries, and he said probably the biggest stereotype in regard to the USA is that there is a crime on every corner. And I said to him, it's just like in Australia. People think, oh, there are kangaroos and koalas and snakes everywhere, including in the cities, and that's just not true, obviously. And a girl I went to school with, she became a medical professor and she moved to Baltimore in the USA. And some people actually asked her that when you get on the bus or the train in Australia and you're waiting for the bus or the train, do all the kangaroos and koalas get on? Which obviously that's just absurd. But yeah, like some people, they really do believe in this sort of nonsense. So there are all sorts of stereotypes that can develop. But getting back to the question about crime and the mass shootings in the USA, if any USA people are watching, I'm very curious to know your thoughts and feelings about your safety, and is this matter being blown out of proportion? I watched a few videos in regard to the Tennessee shooting, and there are some funny comments that have been made in regard to the shooter, like, is it a he or a she or an it or a thing? And yeah, that's mildly amusing, but we have to remember that people were actually murdered in this incident, and people do get killed, murdered in these shootings. So it's really not a laughing matter. Personally, I'm not anti-gun. I feel that in some cases and in some places, people maybe should be armed, need to be armed. So I'm not one of these totally anti-gun sort of people. Maybe there have to be restrictions in some cases, but in Australia there are tough gun laws, but people still get guns. Occasionally there are still mass shootings we still have violent crime in the big cities of Australia, like Sydney, the Brisbane Gold Coast area, and there's actually quite a problem with youth crime on the outskirts of Brisbane at the moment, and it's been in the media quite a lot. Just another thing, I've heard about in the USA there are these so-called gun-free zones, and in some areas there is even signage saying, oh, it's a gun-free zone. And to me, that's just like saying to the shooters, oh, come here, there's no resistance. So in a way, it could be like a type of fertilizer for these mass shooters. And it just reminds me of a situation in the early to late 90s in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Some of you Australian guys watching and listening would remember Brisbane had a mayor, Jim Sawley, I can't remember how to pronounce his name now. And he was a former priest who became the Lord Mayor, and he declared that Brisbane was a nuclear-free zone. And you'd come into Brisbane, entering Brisbane from the Gold Coast, and you'd see all these nuclear-free zone signs all over the place. And I had a bit of a chuckle in regard to that, because just say a nuclear war breaks out, is the enemy going to spare us just because there's a few nuclear-free zone signs around? And quite often the US Navy would dock at the port of Brisbane, and obviously poor old Jim couldn't do anything about that, because that's a federal issue, obviously, with the nuclear-powered warships. So they were allowed to dock here, although I know the New Zealand government banned the American warships from coming into the port of Auckland. But people can say, oh yeah, this is a gun-free zone, this is a so-and-so free zone, whatever. But criminals are not going to pay much attention to that. So just let me know your thoughts and feelings about the shootings, about gun laws, about safety in your community. Where I live in Brisbane, it's fairly safe. But in some areas there is a lot of crime, youth crime, a lot of car theft, break and enters, assault in some cases, so robbery with violence. So I just think that in any large city, including here in Australia, you're always going to have a certain problem with crime. Sometimes it can get out of control. And I think just with the youth, the government here has been very weak in regard to this, not tough enough. And they keep saying, oh yeah, tough on crime, but that's a lot of BS mostly. And that's both sides of politics, not just the current government, the Labor Party. So all of the different political groups have been guilty of this. But I don't really know. Just let me know your ideas in regard to this issue, because it's something that's obviously in the news quite a lot. And just want to know the American take on this. I'll talk to you later.